The Second World War has ended, but the peace is fragile. Across Europe and Asia, cities lie shattered, borders unsettled, and nations exhausted by years of conflict. The great powers emerge from the ruins with victory in hand, yet with visions for the future that no longer align. In the East, armies stand watch over territories won at immense cost. In the West, alliances are bought by economic might. Both sides speak of rebuilding, security, and stability, yet each watches the other with growing distrust. The world enters a new era, one not defined by open battle, but by influence, suspicion, and the quiet maneuvering of diplomacy and intelligence. Decisions made in offices and embassies will shape continents. Every move will carry weight. It is January 1946. The Cold War is beginning.
Hello everyone, this is Keith and welcome to the Solo Gamers Club. Tonight I'm returning to one of my all-time favorite board games, 2 Minutes to Midnight. For this video, I will unveil a new strategy guide that I produced. This will offer tips, both long and short term, for both factions and is designed to work with both solo and multiplayer games. In addition, I'm going to preview a new solo variant that I developed that I hope will bring the solo bot more agency and help it to perform more like a human opponent. We'll still be using the solo bot rules provided in the game, but this variant seeks to modify the bot's target logic selection process to hopefully provide a more capable opponent. Once again, I'll be controlling the Soviets, and the bot will be acting on behalf of the West. When playing historical games, I always enjoy playing the side that lost the conflict historically, as it's always been more rewarding victory if I can beat history. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, I've set up the game for Scenario 1, Soviet Steamroller. We'll give our play deck a cut, and we're ready to begin. Okay, here's the D6 roll for the bot. Okay, the result's a 1, so that means the bot is going to be focused on Europe, either on the NATO or Warsaw Pact alignment, and their focus would be the trade links located therein. So what we'll do is we'll just simply place a token in the area that is focused for the theater doctrine roll. And that will just tell us that when given an option, the bot is going to more heavily weigh that region than those other places on the board. And we'll get started. First card is Italian Communism. Both players will roll a die. And the USSR will roll first, and they can add 1 to their roll for each investment removed in Italy. Well, there's no investment here at the start of the game. If the Soviet roll is higher, then the US roll will add a Soviet influence in Italy. If the Soviet roll is double or more, we'll add 2, and then the card will be removed. Historically, in 1948, there was a very major election in Italy, and at the time it appeared that the communists were going to win that election and possibly turn Italy to the Reds. But the CIA implemented a very clever plan, and they had all of the Italian Americans in the United States write letters back home to their relatives urging them not to vote for the communists, and it worked, and the Democratic leader was elected. So, okay, here is the Soviet roll for this card. The roll is a 4. All right, and now for the West. And they rolled a 5. So in this case, the Soviets will get nothing out of this. And once again, the CIA program appeared to have worked in Italy in their letter writing program. And now we'll draw a card. And we have Stalin, the strongman of the Soviet Union. Very few people stood up to Stalin. The only exception was Joseph Tito from Yugoslavia. He got into a pretty bitter conflict. Tito did not want to surrender any of his authority in Yugoslavia, and it got to a point where Stalin sent KGB hit squads to take Tito out. And finally, Tito responded, if you don't stop playing these games, I'm going to send someone to Moscow, and I won't need to send a second. So that stopped it right there. So we've got Stalin, so we're going to make a die roll and see what happens with this card. The result's a 5, and so we'll read the 3+ portion. Remove 1 or 2 war reparation markers. For each removed, place 1 unrest there and add 1 money to the deck. Then place an unrest in the USSR. Purges and terror, and then we'll have to roll for Stalin's death. Okay. Well, there's plenty of reparation markers to choose from in Central and Eastern Europe. Stalin is going to select Austria. It's going to place an unrest token there, and we're going to add in a reparations card into the deck, and we'll shuffle that in. He's going to do that again, and this time he's going to select, I think, Romania, Hungary, and Bulgaria. We'll take the reparations token, and we're going to place a unrest token in that location. That will move them to 2 unrest. So we're having some problems in Central Europe. It's going to also bring in another reparations card into the deck for us. Now that card does not come without cost. We also have to place unrest in the Soviet homeland, so that is going to put us into homeland crisis. And we're going to have to use our next available money card to rectify that. Now we're going to have to make a roll to see if Stalin dies. And on turn 1, it's going to be a result of 4 or better, and he will be no more. Here's the roll. The result is a 1, so Stalin will survive to fight another day. Now, as this is a red card, the Soviets are going to take up to 2 spy actions for free, and we're going to start out with a suppress unrest roll in the Soviet homeland. We'll see if this spy can round up all of the agitators in the Soviet homeland, or at least one of them, and get us out of homeland crisis. Here's the roll. The result is a 6, and he's successful. He's rounded up an agitator, and that will take the Soviet homeland out of crisis. That's awesome. Incidentally, I should have rolled 2 dice for that suppress unrest attempt, so I'm going to roll an extra one, see if we can get rid of an additional one. I don't know why I rolled 1. It's a 3. Okay, so no further change to that situation. We do have a KGB cell operating within the United States, and I'm going to instruct them to steal technology. 2 dice, and we're looking for 6. And we failed. Okay. All right, our next card is Indonesian independence. Okay, that's a blue card, and we will make a roll for the U.S. in that region. We'll see what the Dutch are going to do with the Dutch East Indies. The result is a 6, and that says the Dutch agree to vacate Indonesia, remove the civil war if present, and place 1 U.S. investment in Indonesia. No effect if communist. Card will be removed. So the Dutch have capitulated their position, creating the nation of Indonesia. The Civil War has ended, and will place a U.S. investment in the location. Now, as this is a blue card, the West is entitled to a spy action. And they're going to take their spy action in the United States. So they're going to spend the spy, and they're going to do a counter-espionage mission, and they're going to remove the KGB influence from the area. The bot has automatic effects. It does not have to roll for them like we do. And now we'll draw a card. And this is a Soviet reparations card that's going to act as a Soviet money card. And we will remove the card from play, and we'll take an action. All right, I think the Soviets are going to select option 4. They're going to place 3 investment if all are in 0 or 1 countries. So that's what we'll do. And I think we will use that, one of them, in Hungary and Romania, another one into Ukraine, and another into Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Those are all 0 or 1 value. Now we can take our special action with those investments, and we're going to use the one in Hungary to remove the unrest that is there. The other 2 will leave in those locations to help us against the uprising in those locations when the civil wars will be resolved. Now our card. And we've got another reparations card. That's awesome. And I think Comrade Stalin is going to interfere in the China Civil War. He's going to introduce the Soviet Red Army in there. It's going to cost us 1 money. And we're eligible to do that because we have influence in the government style that is our own. So we're eligible. Now what happens here when you introduce an army, we get to roll a d6. On a 3+, we're going to gain a cube in the land-air tech chart, representing the combat efficiency that we're going to gain from introducing our troops into that conflict. So here's the roll. The result's a 4, and that is a success. So the Soviets are going to gain a cube in land and air, and that is 1 total cost. We'll be able to replace that with a disc, and that says improved tech, +1 to conventional balance, along with a Soviet interceptor roll on a 5+. That is awesome. This is going to move our conventional balance up to max. We're at +3, giving us a major aggression with a +2 DRM. So we'll see if our latest version of our MiG interceptors are going to be able to push the U.S. bomber advantage out of the strategic weapons box. Here's the roll. The result's a 3, so we failed. And now our card draw. And we've got research. Both players will resolve 1 research action on turns 1 and 2. And then we will cycle the cards. Soviets will select first. All right, this is probably a good opportunity for me to have you take a look at my strategy guide that I've produced. On the first page, we've got the United States, and that is going to highlight some of the strategic thoughts for the U.S. U.S. strategic identity, macroeconomic powerhouse, democratic network builder, and technological leader. Build an unassailable economy and lock the Soviets out of valuable regions. The Soviet Union strategic identity, I have low-cost opportunist, master of covert subversion, and high-wire reformer. Systematically systemize the conflict through asymmetric espionage and KGB coups. All right, so now on the next page, I've got the breakdown for the Soviets, and the key points there are master the KGB coup engine, manage the reform and freedom tightrope, rely on tech theft and nuclear parity, and strategic use of occupied markers. All right, well, tech strategy for the Soviets would be to maintain nuclear parity and steal tech. And with that in mind, I think what we're going to do, we're going to place a Soviet tech cube in Space Launch Vehicle. Now that has a research value of 2, and now we've got 2 cubes there, so we can replace those with the disk. And that will move us up to Space Launch Vehicle, giving us access to the spaceflight technologies and possibly development of an ICBM. Now for the U.S., I have written here tech strategy, rush computing research, and guard secrets. So I think they will continue in their computing research in this case, and they're going to add cube to mainframe computer. All right, now we'll resolve our card. And we've got Nazi spies. Okay, we're going to make a roll and see if we can acquire some Nazi intelligence officers to work for us and the Stasi. Result is a 6. Place 1 Soviet spy in East Germany or any country adjacent and then remove the card. Awesome. So we can place a Soviet spy in East Germany or any adjacent nation to that location. And I think we're going to place that spy cell in East Germany itself. And now our card draw. And we've got proxy war. +1 if Stalin is alive for the first roll. Okay, so we'll be adding 1 to this roll. The result is a 4 modified to a 5. So it says the Soviets may place 2 embargo markers in the Western trade box and target any 0 or 1 worth country which is not occupied and is adjacent to a communist government. And we're going to roll another die with no modifiers. 50-50, Soviet defeat or Soviet victory. Well, I don't think I'm going to take advantage of that. It says Soviets may. So we're going to remove the card. I don't think it's worth the embargo tokens at this point. So we'll just discard the card. And now our card draw. And this one is a Soviet military export card. All right, there's nothing in the Western trade box, so we're going to use that as a Soviet money card. And I think we're going to select option 6, and we're going to place some spies. I'm going to introduce another KGB cell into the US and another into the United Kingdom. And I think we're going to use them right away since that's a red card. We're going to attempt to steal the tech in the US. Here's the roll. And we have no success, unfortunately. And now our card draw. And we've got a US money. Okay, so we'll be drawing a solo card from the deck, and that will tell us what the US is going to use their money card for. Now, I've added some additional cards into the bot deck, and I've decided to use US money train. We've added investment 2 and 3, influence 2 and 3, and change government 2. All right, here is the US solo card, and it is investment. Place 1 investment counter in 2 different countries. If there are 2 unrest in either country, remove 1 unrest and 1 investment. The US will prioritize democracies with 2 unrest, and the US will perform this action twice. US debt is spent to finance. US focus is already set in Europe. Now this action will be performed twice, but it's going to cost the U.S. debt to finance that. Their national debt is maxed out, so they're going to be taking a U.S. money owed token to perform this. This will allow them to place one investment in two different countries, and they'll be able to do that twice. All right, we have to prioritize democracies with two unrest. Austria definitely will qualify for that. There really is nothing else to prioritize. None of the other countries have any unrest with two. So I think we'll put one in the UK, another one in Italy, and another one in Greece to help out that civil war there. Okay, so it looks like the Marshall Plan, giving money out to everyone in Europe, is back in full force once again. And U.S. have a money owed token. The card is the Berlin Blockade. All right, the USSR may roll the die. And I don't know if we want to do that. It's kind of potentially upsetting to our situation in Europe. Historically, of course, Stalin ordered West Berlin to be sealed. And the U.S. was able to counteract that with the Berlin airlift. And I think we're going to pass on that. So the card will be removed. And we'll continue on with our next round. And now the card. It's a Soviet money card. We're getting very lucky. And I think we're going to select option 5. We're going to place a spy and then make either an influence or place an investment. I'm going to place another spy cell in the US, and this is going to actually make it easier for the CIA to conduct counter-espionage against us. They get a +1 modifier if there's more than one spy cell in the area, but since this is the bot, they will automatically succeed anyway. Then I'm going to place Soviet investment into Vietnam. We're going to help out our friends in Hanoi. And since that was a red card, I'm going to attempt another spy action in the US, and we'll attempt to steal that tech. 2d6, and we're looking for 6s. And we failed once again. And now the card draw is the Red Army. Okay, we're going to make a roll and see what happens. A 3, and that is no effect. The card will be cycled. As many of you know, directly after World War II, the Soviet Red Army was the largest in the world. And now the card draw. Israeli independence. Okay, we're going to roll a die and see what happens with the Arab-Israeli War of 1948. The result is a 2. It says, in Israel, remove the occupied marker and add 2 civil war markers representing both Palestinian forces and Arab invasion forces. The Arabs, with British support, take the situation more seriously and commit larger forces. All right, so the occupied marker is removed, and we're going to place 2 civil war markers in Israel. All right. So far we haven't seen any U.S. money cards yet, so our doctrine hasn't been very useful yet. This is popular unrest, so we're going to roll a die. Results of 5. Both sides must place 1 unrest in any authoritarian country. Then both sides must place 1 unrest in an occupied country, and that's repression. All right. All right, we have to begin with the Soviets, and I think they're going to place 1 in Egypt. It's going to send them into a coup. Egypt is authoritarian, but it has U.S. influence there. The U.S. is going to place unrest in Afghanistan. All right, now we have to place 1 unrest in any occupied country. Okay, starting with the Soviets. I think the Soviets will place that into Libya, setting off another coup. And the U.S. has to find an occupied country to place that in. And I think the U.S. will place that into Hungary. All right. Now we'll resolve those coups. All right, we'll begin with Egypt. Okay, we're going to be rolling 2d6. That's because we have influence in the region. The side to gain from that is the non-influence player, which is us. So we'll be rolling 2 dice. And we'll be taking the higher roll. Okay, the high roll is a 5. All right, and that says, successful coup or government voted out. Remove an opposing influence, or if not present, place a friendly influence. Well, in this case, we will be removing the U.S. influence from Egypt. Second, if the highest die was a 6, we would repeat that. Well, it's not. Third, we're going to replace the government with the coup winner's government unless it is occupied. If it is, the government is not altered, and we'll set the country to 1 unrest, keeping the occupied marker. So we have a successful coup in Egypt, removing U.S. influence from the country. That is awesome. Now we'll do the same to Libya. Libya has Western influence. We'll roll the 2 dice and get the high roll. High roll is a 6. Okay. And that says, remove an opposing influence. Okay, so the U.S. influence is removed from Libya. The highest die was a 6, so we're going to redo step 1 again. And it says in this case, if it's not present, place friendly influence. We'll be placing Soviet influence in Libya. Awesome. And we would replace the government type if it was not occupied. Well, it is. So we're going to set the country to 1 unrest, keeping the occupied marker, and we have a successful coup in Libya. And now the card draw. And this is the Atomic Energy Act. In this case, it says we'll have to determine if there's a Soviet spy in the UK, and we have one. So in this case, we'll be looking on the 2+ in order to resolve that effect. So only on a 1 will it be the otherwise. Here's the roll. Results at 2. If a Soviet spy is in the UK, the US denies nuclear technology exchange to the UK. Remove 1 US influence from the UK. All right. So U.S. influence is removed from the UK, and they're going to lose control of the 2 factories. You have to have the government and at least 1 influence to gain the factories. U.S. victory progress will slide by 2 for the loss of those factories. And now the card. And we've got Operation Paperclip and Osavayakim. All right, let's see if we can determine who is going to be gaining the Nazi scientists. Here's the roll. Result is a 1. Soviets place 1 cube in gray or black in satellites or space, technology, and then remove the card. So we've captured Werner von Braun. So we can place it either in space or in satellite technology. So our options would be to place it in the lunar probe or first satellite. And both of those are going to require 2 research cubes in order to get that. I think we're going to go with first satellite. So we'll place it there. We need 1 more to advance that. So the Soviets might be getting Sputnik 10 years early with the aid of Werner von Braun. All right, we're going to have a slew of U.S. money cards, I would imagine. Okay, here's the card, and we've got the first Civil War card. Okay, in this case, we're going to mark on our track 1 card, and then we're going to roll a die. Results of 5, and it says Soviet may add 1 Civil War marker to any Civil War. Outstanding. Everything is going Uncle Joe's way. We're going to add a 3rd Civil War to Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. And now the card. And it's the first U.S. money card. Well, they're going to have to use that to pay for their money owed. And we've got war reparations. Okay, we're going to make a roll and see if we can extract some more reparations from Europe. Here's the roll. We've got a 3. Remove 0, 1, or 2 war reparations markers, placing unrest there for each removed marker, and add a reparations money to the deck for this turn only. And then we will cycle the card. All right. Well, I think we're going to soft pedal this a bit. We're going to take a reparations from East Germany. It's going to cost us 1 unrest token in that region. If we would have taken 2, it would have put us into a coup situation, so that might not have been the best thing. So we'll just take the 1, and then we'll add in a war reparations card to the deck. The Soviets were experts at dismantling, in particular, East German factories as reparations. They cleaned them things out. I think there's just hooks and wires left in the building. And we've got the 2nd Civil War, so we're going to be resolving all the civil wars on the board. All right, I'm going to begin the resolutions in the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Soviet Red Army is deployed, and we have 1 investment token. So we're going to be rolling 3 dice, and in this case, we'll be gaining +1 for the Army, +1 for the investment. Okay, here is the roll. Soviets have 1 success, and that's all they're going to need. We'll see if the Baltic rebels will be able to inflict some casualties on the Red Army. And they have no success. So in this case, the success will take out the Civil War with the investment. Soviet Red Army will return to the force pool, and we will place an occupied marker there. Soviet victory progress is going to go up by 2. 1 for winning the Civil War, and 1 for having the Red Army present. So 1, 2, and we will earn another victory token, moving us up to a total of 2 to 1. Now we'll do the same in Ukraine and Belarus. Once again, we're going to have 3 dice, and in this case, we're going to gain +2. 1 for the Army, 1 for the investment. Here's the roll. And we've rolled 3 1s. Okay, so no success there. And wow, I think that Soviet Army commander is going to be sent to a gulag. Okay, the Civil War rebels will now roll, and all they can do is inflict casualties on the Red Army. They have 1 success, so we're going to gain a unrest token back in the USSR, and that is going to send us into Homeland Crisis. The investment is consumed. Red Army will remain in its position. Okay, we're going to move on to the Greek Civil War. In this case, the government player will be the U.S. There's no armies there, but there is 2 U.S. investments, so they'll get 2 rolls, adding +2 to the dice. And they've got 2 successes with that. That's going to be sufficient. The rebels can roll, but they won't be able to change the result. They would have had no successes, so the investment is consumed. The Civil War is over, and as was historical, the West has won the Greek Civil War. We'll mark that with an occupied marker. Actually, that's incorrect. We don't place an occupied marker only if there was an army there. We will align the country, and we're going to place 1 unrest there. All right. So that was a historical result. Churchill was very concerned about the Greek Civil War. Somehow, Stalin was not interested in that at all. Tito was very interested in the Greek Civil War, and he urged Stalin to support the communist rebels. And that was the start of the friction between them. All right, now we will move on to the Israeli Civil War. Government player will be the United States. We have influence there. No armies are deployed, so we're going to roll 2 dice. And they have no successes. All right, now the Arab armies will roll. They get 1 success, they will win the war. They have no success. Neither side scored a hit, so we will place an additional Civil War marker there. And incidentally, when the Israelis went into a civil war, the U.S. lost control of a factory, so their victory progress should have been reduced by 1. U.S. won the Greek Civil War, so we will increase that by 1. I forgot about that. Okay. All right, we're going to move to the Vietnam conflict. French army has deployed. They're going to gain an extra die, so they have 3 dice, and they'll be getting +1 for the roll. Here's the French army against Ho Chi Minh and General Giap. He has 1 success. Okay, we will mark that there. Now, the Viet Minh will roll 2 dice, and they're going to be gaining +1 for the Soviet investment, and +1 because there are 2 Civil War markers there. +2. And they have 2 successes. 2 successes. All right. French army has a success. That'll remove 1 Civil War marker. Viet Minh have 2 successes. And that is going to send the bodies back to France. And the French public are not too happy with that. 2 unrest tokens will be placed in France. They are 1 away from going into a coup. All right, the Soviet investment is spent, and we'll move on now to the Chinese Civil War. All right, the Soviets will be the government player. They have installed the Red Army, so they'll be getting 3 dice, and they'll get a +2, 1 for the investment, 1 for the army. Okay, here is the roll. They have 1 success. All right, now the forces of Chiang Kai-shek are going to roll. They have no modifiers, unfortunately. They have no success. So the Soviet success is going to remove 1 Civil War marker, leaving 1 there, and their investment will be spent. The war will continue. So overall, that was a little bit of a mixed bag for the Soviets. We had success in the Baltic states, failed in the Ukraine, we failed in Greece, failed in Israel. We had some success with the Viet Minh in French Indochina, and some success in the Chinese Civil War. So I guess overall, probably advantage Soviet. And now the card draw. And we've got Soviet money. All right. All right, Soviets are in homeland crisis, so we're going to select option 5, place a spy and then make an investment. So we'll put a spy in from our force pool into the Soviet homeland, and then the Soviet investment will remove 1 of the unrest tokens, taking us out of homeland crisis. All right. And I think since it is a red card, we're going to suppress unrest. And we'll get the KGB doing what they do best. 2 dice, and a success will be on a 5 or 6. And we can remove an unrest token with that. We have 1 success, and that will remove another unrest token. Awesome. All right, here is our next draw. And we've got McCarthy. All right. Here's the roll. Result is a 6. McCarthy runs amok. Make a free counterintelligence roll in the U.S. and then add 2 U.S. homeland unrest. Okay. All right, we'll see if the CIA can expel those KGB cells in the U.S. And they have 1 success. So 1 cell is going to be sent back home. And U.S. is going to gain 2 unrest. And we'll place 2 unrest in the U.S. And our next draw. Authoritarian unrest. Okay, here's the die roll. Results of 4. Both sides must place 1 unrest in an authoritarian country. A coup result of 4+ is treated as a 4 unless no influence is present. Soviets are going to place unrest in France, sending them into a coup situation. U.S. theater doctrine is in East and Southeast Asia, so they're going to be placing the unrest in North Korea, moving that up to 2. Now we have to resolve the coup that is occurring in France. Influence is present, so the Soviets will be rolling 2 dice and will be using the highest value of the 2 at a maximum of 4 though, however. Result is a 3. So we will resolve that for 3. It says country slides into armed conflict. If the country is occupied or has a worth of 2 or more, no effect. Well, it does have a value of 2. That says to set the country to 1 unrest. So the French unrest is now down to 1. And our next card, Soviet money. And I think the Soviets are going to place a spy and make an investment. We're going to place a spy in Israel. Help out with that civil war that's occurring there. And I think we'll place an investment in Libya. Try to solidify our gains in Libya. Soviets are going to take a spy action in East Germany, and we're going to attempt to suppress unrest. Okay, here's the roll. We have no success, so KGB is struggling for the moment. And our next card. And we've got Tito. All right. If Stalin is the Soviet leader, so we need to roll a 5 or 6 to perform the top portion of the card. Here's the roll. Results of 3. So in this case, we have to do the otherwise. It says the Soviets expel Tito. So Stalin has expelled Tito from the Comintern. And it says, set Yugoslavia to authoritarian and add an unrest in the USSR. Okay. So Yugoslavia will go to authoritarian. Soviets will lose control of the factory, moving them down to 0. And then we're going to add an unrest in the homeland, moving them to 2. All right, that's a red card. Soviets are going to take a spy action in the UK. And they are going to foment unrest. We'll be rolling 2d6, and we will be looking for a 6+. +1 if any unrest in a 0 or 1 worth country. Well, the value is 2, so no modifiers. And the KGB failed again. And the next card, USA money. All right. All right, so using our solitaire module variant, we'll go on to number 2, reactive threat overrides. It says before executing a bot card action, conduct a 5-second threat assessment on the player's board state. We're basically looking for the human players, us, if we would be 1 step away from fully aligning a 2 worth country, or if we are 1 step away from gaining a geographical objective. So we'll do a 5-second scan of the board and see if any of those factors are true. No, none of those are true. So we will, currently right now, the theater doctrine is in South and Central America. U.S. has a little bit of unrest in its area, so I think what they're going to select is place a spy and an investment. U.S. will place a spy in the United States, and we will place investment in Cuba. As this is a blue card, the U.S. can take some spy actions, and they will take one in the U.S. And they're going to expel their KGB counterpart. And our next card, popular unrest. Okay, we're going to roll a die. Result is a 6. Both sides may place one unrest in any country and then remove the card. Soviets are going to place unrest in the UK. That will help them with their potential spy actions in the future. US is going to place unrest in East Germany, Poland, and Czechoslovakia, moving them up to a total of 3, placing them into a coup situation. All right, we have influence, so we're going to be rolling 2d6 and taking the higher value. Well, it's a 6. That is the result. All right, and that reads, successful coup or government voted out. Remove an opposing influence, or if not present, place friendly influence. Well, this is going to remove the influence from the Soviets in that region. And it says if the highest die roll was a 6, repeat step 1. So in this case, we will place U.S. influence in the East. We would replace the government unless it is occupied. Well, fortunately for us, East Germany, Poland, and Czechoslovakia are occupied by Soviet troops. We're going to set the country to 1 unrest. And we'll leave the occupied marker there. So that was a successful coup in those countries. Slightly earlier than what happened historically, but definitely within the frame of possibility. And our next card, U.S. money. All right, the U.S.'s focus in the theater is in Europe. U.S. is going to place 2 investment, and they're going to put one into France and another in Austria. And they're going to take their special actions where we can use that to suppress the unrest. Bring stability back to Europe. And our next card, another U.S. money. U.S. influence is still in Europe. All right, the U.S. is going to follow what I have written in my strategy guide for the U.S., and they're going to attempt to make some improvements to the economies in Western Europe. They're going to select place 3 investment in 0 or 1 worth countries. They're going to place investment in West Germany and the lowlands, in Greece, and in Italy. And now, since we've placed that investment in West Germany, we're going to attempt to get rid of this destruction marker. We're going to roll 2d6. We'll be able to add 1 for our investment, and we need a result of 6 or better to get rid of the destruction. And they are successful. That's going to get rid of the destruction marker, moving the U.S. up for the 2 factories up to 3 on the victory progress. All investment is going to be removed. We'll move on now to Italy, and we'll attempt the same thing. In this case, Italy has 2 investment there, so we'll be adding +2 to get rid of the destruction marker. And we're successful. We've got a 7, removing the destruction marker and increasing U.S. victory progress by 2 for taking control of the factory. And the U.S. will have to remove all of their investment there as well. And our next card. We've got Soviet famine. Okay, we're going to have to roll a die. The result is a 6, and that says place 2 unrest in the USSR or in Ukraine. Food confiscation. If Ukraine is in a civil war, instead of unrest, add a civil war marker. Well, Ukraine currently is in a civil war, so I think we're going to be placing the 2 unrest in the Soviet homeland. It's going to move us up to 4 unrest, and thus placing the Soviet homeland in homeland crisis. And our next card. Soviet reparations card. All right. Well, we're in homeland crisis, so I think what we're going to do is place a spy and an investment. So we'll place another spy into the Soviet homeland, and we're going to place an investment there as well. And we will use that, the special action, to remove unrest. Now the Soviets will take a suppress unrest action with the KGB. And we're looking for 5s and 6s. And once again, we have failed. We've got 2 2s. So no success there. We're still in the homeland crisis. And our next card. Spy agencies. Soviets will perform a spy action with any spy, even if it's already used, and do not mark it used, or place 1 investment in a country with any Soviet spy. All right. Soviets are going to place investment in the homeland to remove and suppress the unrest, taking us out of homeland crisis. U.S. will have to roll a die on a 4+. They will place a spy in any democratic country with 2+ worth. Results of 1, so they failed at that. Card will be cycled. Our next card. Soviet money. All right, I think the Soviets will take action 6. We're going to place 2 spies. I want to try and have another shot at getting that tech theft counter in the U.S. So we're going to place a spy in the U.S. and I think another spy we're going to place in China to help out with that civil war that's going on there. Then we're going to attempt to steal the tech. Now the U.S. has unrest present, so we'll be getting a +1 to our die roll. We're looking for a 6. 2d6 +1. And we've done it. We actually have 2 successes. There's only 1 tech theft counter there, but we're going to steal that. Spy will be spent, and we have stolen U.S. technology. And this is just what I was looking for. We're going to place 2 research in a previously researched U.S. technology. We're going to do that in atom bomb. 2 tokens, and that's going to be converted into a red disk. And we will acquire the atomic bomb. So it looks like Julius and Ethel Rosenberg have done their duty to the motherland. So we're going to get to build bombers, we get a nuclear weapon, and we get to make mad rolls. So these units, 4 bombers and a nuclear weapon, will be added to the Soviet force pool. That is awesome. And since we're entitled to 2 spy actions with a red card, I'm going to use this Soviet KGB cell in China, and they're going to attempt to suppress unrest in North Korea. Now, because we're doing this in an adjacent country, we only get 1 die. So we're looking for 5+. And we are unsuccessful again. KGB needs a stern talking to. And our next card. Navy arms race. If the U.S. has naval advantage, which they do, they're going to place an investment in any 0 or 1 worth country. Okay. All right, the U.S.'s theater focus is in East and Southeast Asia, so they're going to place an investment in the French Indochina War. Then the card says that the U.S. can place a naval tech cube on a die roll of 3+. If the roll is 5+, the U.S. may also place a cube in any tech. So here is the roll. Results of 3, so that's enough to place a tech cube in naval tech. U.S. will place that tech cube in nuclear subs. It's going to take 2 breakthroughs in order to advance in that category. Finally, the card says that the Soviets will get a naval tech cube on a 4+. And they've rolled a 1, so we failed at that. All right, we have 1 card remaining for turn 1, and that is the Chinese Civil War. If China is in a civil war, we're going to roll a die. All right, the Chinese Civil War is still going on. Here is the roll. Result is a 3, and that says no effect. We will cycle the card. On turn 2 or later, it would be removed. So we will cycle the card, and that's going to bring turn 1's actions to a close. And that's about as far as I'm going to take this video. Purpose of this video was to test out my solitaire supplement for the game, and I'm pretty happy with how that works. I like the extra agency that it's giving to the bot player. It's basically refocusing his efforts into certain theaters on the board, but yet we have an override in there with the reactive threat override in the event that the human player is attempting one of 2 important tasks that would override that. So I kind of like what's happening with that. I haven't really used the Part 3 personality and risk disposition, but I might test that out in the future. But basically what this was designed to do was to give just a little more agency to the bot player and making it a little bit more unpredictable for the human player. In the future, I'm going to conduct a full playthrough of this game. I don't know when that's going to happen. I've got 2 new games coming in the mail that will be here within a week, so those will likely be coming to the channel soon. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this look at probably one of my top 3 board games of all time, 2 Minutes to Midnight. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in the near future. In the meantime, this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club signing off and wishing everyone a pleasant evening and happy gaming. Good night.